The next call will be a split call. Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, what a load of absolute bollocks. If that member thinks that a flag defines who we are as a country, then that represents the greatest level of colonial sort of insecurity that I've come across for a long time. I'll tell you what, Mr. Speaker, a flag never defines how I view our country. And Mr. Williamson talked about his ancestors who had served this country. He talked about the fact that they didn't stand under a piece of linen. Well, Mr. Speaker, I've had several members of my family who put a hell of a lot of service into this country, and if they thought for one moment that we were prioritising a flag over child poverty, over unemployment, over economic development, then they would actually roll in their graves. This is an absolute disgrace. And Mr. Williamson said that we need something we can go overseas and be proud of. Well, Mr. Speaker, for me, I would be a hell of a lot prouder if I go overseas as a Kiwi and say, you know what, in New Zealand, there is no child poverty. Mr. Speaker, in New Zealand, there is no unemployment. There is no government debt. But we cannot say those things at all. And in fact, all three of those are just examples of an absolute disgrace that this government has presided over for the last 7 years. I get quite riled up about this because when I hear people say a flag is what defines us as a nation, I think how ridiculous. If New Zealanders think we're that shallow, then heaven help us. But I know the vast majority of people that I talk to and I associate with are not that shallow in any way, shape or form. Mr. Speaker, what I'd like to talk about in the next sort of 4 minutes is actually the process. The thing I like doing when I look at these bills is I go through the regulatory impact statement, because what the regulatory impact statement does is it's supposed to be a rather objective view of how the bill is going to impact on New Zealanders, written by government officials who are not supposed to be in the pocket of the government, but provide the government with advice and members on the select committee with a way forward and things they need to consider. The first thing this says, Mr. Speaker, is, and I'm going to quote this, any process considering change must be robust and that it needs to lead to a legitimate outcome which is accepted by the public. Now, we all agree on that. That is vitally important. But then we go through this, Mr. Speaker, and it says, and I quote, a number of decisions have been made by Cabinet limiting the focus of the regulatory impact statement. So immediately the Department of Justice has said, okay, well, we can't consider a whole lot of options because the Cabinet has said so. Then it says we have not considered the status quo as a feasible option due to decisions already made by Cabinet. Already made by Cabinet. So immediately what we've got are decisions made by Cabinet that are going to influence this whole process. And then we've got here saying we have not considered holding a ballot together with a general election due to the Prime Minister's indication that the process should be completed before the 2017 general election. So yet again, Mr. Speaker, we've got the Prime Minister dictating this whole process. So this is not going to be considered or accepted by the public as a legitimate outcome. Now, why is this process? If it is done in a general election, we get about 80% turnout. You're going to get the majority of Kiwis who are going to vote because they go to the polling booth anyway. The history of postal ballots is around about 50% absolute max. So we're not going to get the vast majority of Kiwis engaging in this. In fact, it says, and I quote, we might expect that consideration of the New Zealand flag as an issue New Zealanders will find engaging. This could mean higher voter turnout in a postal poll as long as the referendum is well timed and the questions are well framed. Now, if that isn't official saying this is not a very good idea, but we can't say that because we don't want to annoy the Cabinet, then I don't know what is. Mr. Speaker, this is a process that is being driven by the Cabinet and the Prime Minister in a way which I actually believe is possibly, well, if it's not unconstitutional, then it's certainly unfair. If we really do want to change the flag, if New Zealanders really do want a change, then make it easy, as this document says it has to be. In fact, in this statement, it actually outlines the fact that public accessibility on the option put forward by the government, it says it is medium. Public accessibility means a referendum process that is easy to understand and participate in, where voters understand the implications of their vote. And the Ministry of Justice says that's not that high. New Zealanders will not engage. Thank you.